Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. We're not live.
Well, I got it turned on. Oh,
You know why?
You forgot something.
How about if I just project?
Yeah, you just
a little
project.
bit? Okay. Well, let's go to the Lord. Father, thank you again for the opportunity to come into your presence, Lord, to gather in your name, and especially, Lord, to look into your word, to learn and grow in knowledge of you. And Lord, what you expect of us. We might become the men and women, that we may mature into the people you've called us to be. So we give this time into your hands, and we look to you, Holy Spirit, to open our understanding, to show us things. Show us what we individually need to know this morning. And we thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen. Yeah. All righty. I didn't put the main title up, the trials and execution of Jesus. This is, you mean to tweak that a little bit?
I just can't see it because it's so light.
Is that better?
Yeah.
I'm glad that's better. I wasn't sure it would work.
And he blew on it.
All righty. Before I get into this, just a brief update. Donna's not here this morning. She's still in Seattle with our daughter. Howard is still improving. He is being transferred in the next 2 or 3 days to a long-term care facility. Now there's two we wanted it, maybe Eugene, Grants Pass. They're doing a facility in Seattle. The reason being, they said that there were two reasons. One, there's no openings down here, I guess Portland South, no openings. And second, he has tubes in both sides to drain his lungs. And they're talking about taking those tubes out in 2 to 3 weeks. They want the same surgeon that put them in. Evidently, it's a little bit complicated. You don't just, jerk it out and put a Band-Aid on it. So, anyway, the difficult part, the reason they're up there still, is once he transfers to the long-term care facility, he cannot have any visitors.
Are you kidding? Not even his wife?
No.
Oh.
That's not unusual. As some of you may recall, we weren't able to go see Vi. Donna couldn't go see Vi.
Right.
They were shut down. So, for the facility, this is the last chance they'll have to see him physically for the foreseeable future.
But they'll be able to FaceTime and talk to him that way?
Probably with his, he's got a cell phone, so probably he'll be able to do that.
It's better than that.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, that's why she's not here this morning. This is kind of their last bit. So, and we're looking forward. I personally am praying for, once they get those tubes out, that something opens up locally. Now, from what I understand, and actually a friend of mine yesterday was telling me that rehab facility, now actually that's what he's going to, is a rehab type environment. Okay, long-term care, but rehab type. Anyway, yesterday a friend was telling me that a fella he's familiar with going to Grants Pass for rehab, and once he enters the facility, he can have no visitors. And that's Grants Pass, that's rehab. Not even his wife can come in, see it. So, that's what it is. So, okay. Also, before we get into this, just give you a heads up. The Lord's already been talking to me about the next study that we're going to be doing. And it's the Book of Jonah. And there's quite a few things that are opening up to me about it. And I'll have an outline and stuff like that in the future. But it's worth your while to look at it. Most of my thoughts about it were from Sunday school, as a kid Sunday school. And most of that focus was on the fish. Really. Didn't have a lot, didn't have a lot of other stuff in it. But when you get to looking at it, and I'll just give you two things you might consider doing. I went blank, so maybe I won't give them to you. There's some stuff on YouTube I found very interesting this week. One was by a rabbi talking about the Book of Jonah. What was really interesting, and we'll talk more about this, Yom Kippur, the Jews have a particular, it's a very special time. Yom Kippur is a very special time. Part of their celebration of Yom Kippur, they read together the Book of Jonah. That really surprised me. This is something kind of interesting, and they're not doing it because they serve fish on Yom Kippur. Okay, so what are they getting out of this? Why are they making such a big deal? They're reading this on Yom Kippur, and the rabbi goes into that. Anyway, there's quite a bit. The title, as I understand the title at this point, is going to be Jonah, Attitude, and Relationship. Jonah, Attitude, and Relationship. And down the road, we'll see if the Lord tweaks that or not. Okay, so we're at the point in our outline, Jesus, and actually in your outline it said Jesus before Pilate and Herod. They're both governors, so I shortened it. Jesus before the governors. That's actually an S on the end right there. Okay. So, let's do this. Grady, you've got a pretty good voice. I would like for you, please, take the Luke 23 passages, and you'll notice that most of the passages are sequential. There's Luke 23, 1 and 2, 3 through 7, 8, 12, 13, 16. So if you'll take those, Giselle, would you be so kind as to take John 18 and Judy, would you take John 19? I've got it here and here. Wes, are you up to reading? No. Okay.
That would hurt because I'm on the computer too much.
I think there were comments from the gallery, but we'll ignore them for the moment. And Pastor, you probably are going to be back and forth, or do you want to pick up Matthew?
I can try.
All right.
Matthew
We're going to do
27.
Matthew 27. And again, these are sequential. That's
Okay.
why I think it'll work for us. Okay. So, the whole point here is to have an understanding about the execution of Jesus Christ. And do you remember what we finished last week was the Jews planning. You remember what they planned? We kind of picked that out from what else was going on. But what were they planning? Anybody remember? I see that head shake back there, AJ. Okay, because this is important. To really bring this all together, what we're doing, the crucifixion is what reconciled us to God. Take, there's other passages, but you look at Romans chapter 5, it's by his death we're reconciled. So they met because from their perspective, he had to die, and it was better if they could manipulate Rome in the form of Pilate to making that happen. Then they don't have any of the blame. The people aren't going to be down on them. And, it opens up several things. And Rome executed people in several different ways. But they fastened on crucifixion. For several reasons. We covered some of that last week. We're going to go into it a little bit more. But this is what's important here. And as we go through this, look at the manipulation, how they put Pilate on the spot. I have a place in the outline, I think it's in the outline, says Pilate's dilemma. Because they boxed him in. They really manipulated him to get a crucifixion. And a crucifixion, remember, was not the only way of executing. In fact, crucifixion was very, very limited in its use. It was applied only to slaves and lower classes that were found guilty of rebellion. We would call it treason today. But that's the only people that could be crucified. And that's what they fastened on. And again, you look at, as we go through this, you watch how they box Pilate in. He's going to be crucified. And that's their plan. Excuse me. Okay. So, to bring this together, context here, political context. We know he goes to Pilate first, and we're going to read that when we get to Luke. Actually, let's go ahead and read Luke 23, 1 and 2. We may read that twice, but I want to get us kind of up and running. And I want to point out that the passage Grady is reading here happens after they had their planning session. Okay? When it says the whole body, you're talking about the chief priest and the Sanhedrin. So if you would, please.
Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king."
Thank you. Okay. Now, these are the charges. We'll bring that up down here. To understand what's going on, because we're not talking a bunch of dummies. We're talking about the elders of the people. We're talking about folks who are pretty sharp. They know what they're about. We're going to take a sidestep. Let's talk about the responsibilities of the governors, because they take him before Pilate, who sends him to Herod. Herod and Pilate are both governors of Roman provinces. I think I had that in the definition. Pilate is over Judea and Samaria. Herod, that's Herod Antipas, is over Galilee and Perea. Perea is a crossover in the Decapolis area where the demon-possessed man among the tombs and stuff over in the east of Galilee. Okay, so to understand this, we need to know, what's a governor do? Okay, well, first off, Pilate was governor from AD 26 to AD 36. So he was there for 10 years. And as a governor, and again, this applies to Herod Antipas too. Herod, they use the word Herod in there. The original ruler, governor, over both Herod's area and Pilate's area was King Herod the Great, the one that had the babies, the male babies killed. That was King Herod the Great. Herod Antipas is one of his sons. Another son, Archelaus, I think it's close pronunciation, he was over the provinces that Pilate now has. Anyway, he got kicked out. Anyway, that gives you an idea. Herod Antipas, he was never a king. He was just a governor, Roman governor over those Galilee and Perea. Okay, so what are they supposed to be doing? Now we've read the charges, and think about the charges as we go through this. They had three things they were to do, three major responsibilities. One, maintain order. Now I mentioned to you in the past that Pilate, and again the same things would apply to Herod Antipas, he was the supreme commander, if you would, commander-in-chief of all the troops. Okay. Now, in the Roman troops in the province, now he was to respond to all foreign and domestic threats. If Egypt were to invade, coming up from the south into Judea, Pilate's the one that's supposed to, get the army together and fight them off. But also the rebellions internally in Judea was just a hotbed of rebellions. They had, in our time, we're familiar with the term militias. Some of the white supremacy groups, and there's certainly a lot of other militias out there. That's what these groups would have been like, only they were a lot more active and aggressive. So he had maintained order. So rebellions was something that was high on his list. And if he didn't take care of it, they'd get another governor. Because again, the governor here is appointed from Rome. Okay. The second one is justice. And in general, what it meant was the governor would hold a hearing and make a judgment. The governor was a supreme authority and the only person authorized in the whole province that could impose capital punishment. Out of the whole province, he's it. Okay. He's the Supreme Court. He's the executioner, or not executioner literally, but says that. Also, we'll keep in mind with all of this, this is the governor. The local people, the Jews, were responsible for internal affairs, the religious and civil stuff. Okay, and they really, Rome's whole policy was, let them run the stuff, they get out of hand, then you step in. But basically, let the locals take care of things. Okay, so the third thing was taxation. The governor, and I thought this is interesting, the governor set the amount of taxes for each town and each district in his province. And then he collected them. One reason he had troops. You know, one of them to carry a stick, the other one to carry the bag, you know. It's your turn. Divvy up. Okay. Now, also, with all of this, the governor had to report and submit reports and stuff back to Rome. In fact, it's quite interesting. There's literally the original documents are not available necessarily to us, but they've been copied and stuff. Some of the original documents from Palestine to Rome are still in existence. Tacitus was a governor later on. And I was reading a letter the other day that he wrote back to the emperor saying, look, we got these Christians running around and this is what I'm doing about it. Am I doing it like you want? I mean, that's basically the gist of it. And that letter's still in existence. So some of this other stuff still exists as well. So anyway, he had to, you know, the reports, they got to send back. Like on taxes especially, part of the taxes supported the troops, the governor, you know, stuff like that. And the rest of it went back to Rome. In fact, he was short enough on money, or he was upset enough with the Jews, he took money from the temple treasury and built an aqueduct for Jerusalem. Not Jerusalem, it was a town up north, I think, which didn't make the Jews very happy. But anyway, so that's his responsibilities. Now let's take another look at Luke 23, 1 and 2. Read that again if you would please, and as he does, think about the responsibilities and the charges they bring.
Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he is Christ, a king.
Thank you. Now that tribute, my translation says taxes. But what does that play in? And now, what's this about? We found this man misleading. I looked up the Greek there. One translation of that Greek word is corrupting. Also, misleading, corrupting, corrupting and be kind of misleading in a very negative sense, if you would. So maintain order, and then what's this business about a king? We're back to maintain order again. And the misleading, you might even throw it under justice. They're targeting his responsibilities. Targeting definitely. So you can see they know what they're about. They're not just, you know, we need you to do this, but they're putting him on the spot. This is your responsibility, and we're charging him this and this and this and this. Okay. Also, there's bad feeling between Pilate and the Jews. You see that in some of this. As we go along here, and historical records, I mentioned about that letter from, was it Tacitus? I can't remember now who I said, but anyway, about the Christians that written to the emperor. Historical records state that the Jews had threatened Pilate with lodging a formal complaint with Rome for flouting their traditions. And again, Roman policy is the locals run things within our guidelines, basically. And okay, now whether that letter was actually sent or not, at least it was threatened. And again, that's a matter of public record. So, a formal complaint by the representatives of the province, in other words, if the Jews pushed this and actually sent a letter to Rome, it could lead to a recall. In my understanding from the different things I read, if he was recalled under pretty severe circumstances, it's very likely him and his family would be executed. You know, you didn't hold up your end and bye. So, I want to get that in here, so when we get down to Pilate's dilemma, we can have a better understanding of what he was dealing with. Okay, we're going to go to John 18 next. A little preview here. The entering the house of a Gentile would ceremonially defile a Jewish person. Remember now, this is all happening on the day of preparation for Passover. They don't want, and we're talking priests in this. So if they get ceremonially defiled, they cannot participate in Passover. And Passover is a big, big, big deal. Big deal. And they need to be there. Okay, so you defile them. So when we get down here, they're taking, what we're going to look at is they're going from the priest to Pilate. We're looking at another account for that. And they use the word Praetorium there. The Praetorium is the governor's residence, and it was located in Herod the Great's palace on the west edge of town, of Jerusalem. That's where, and the palace, again, we're not talking living space strictly. You've got places for administration, you've got places for judgment, you've got a great hall, you got a lot of administrative things there. That's where Pilate is located. Okay, so let's look at this account now from John's viewpoint. If you would, 28 through 32, please.
Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas into the Praetorium, and it was early. And they themselves did not enter into the Praetorium, so that they would not be defiled, but might eat Passover. Therefore Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered and said to him, "If this man were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him to you." So Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law." Then the Jews said, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death," to fulfill the words of Jesus which he spoke, signifying that by what kind of death he was about to die.
Thank you. Now notice 2 or 3 things in that. Like I said, they didn't go in, and that's why. They didn't want to be defiled. So Pilate went out to them. And from what I understand, that was something of a concession on his part, but maybe not really, because local customs, their policy is to recognize local customs. So they can't come in, he goes out. It's kind of part of the deal. And again, at this point, he's been governor for at least 4 years. Okay, now, let's take a look at verse 30. They answered and said to him, "If this man were not an evildoer, we would not have delivered him to you." Some translations where it says they answered, they use the word retorted. It does capture more of the flavor. They were pretty confrontational, sassy, whatever, arrogant with Pilate. They didn't just step in and start saying, well, this is going on and stuff. Hey, we brought him. More in his face type. So, Pilate, again, and this, remember like we said a couple weeks ago, the Jews are being very careful to be within the letter of the law. Now they did the false witness and stuff, yeah, they got outside of it with that, but everything else, they're really doing their best to keep it, They may be on the very edge, but they're keeping it within the boundaries. Excuse me. So when then Pilate said, take him yourselves and judge him according to your law. Well, you guys deal with it then. Which again, you know, that's policy. Then, verse 30, second part of 31, we're not permitted to put anyone to death. Okay, that sets it up for Pilate right there. Okay, what are we dealing with then? That's, you know, they're pretty confrontational to him. And we can't put anyone to death. Okay, so they brought somebody to me for me to execute. I mean, he's going to catch that. He's not stupid. He's going to catch that. Okay. Now, going on from here, that's part of the power struggle that they had. You know, there was, again, that tension between them.
Really, Chris?
And Pilate, as I guess I would have covered that, the usual Roman policy, judging by your law. Okay. Now, when the Jews brought up execution, you know, we're not permitted to kill anyone, then that's their prep. The charges, well, actually the prep, but this, again, is part of that manipulation, putting Pilate into a corner. Excuse me. So, now, Pilate questions Jesus. We talked about the charge, now we go to the questioning. So let's look at John 18 now, the 33 through 38. Now this is the first questioning. Technically this is trial number 1. Or no, with the governors, be trial number 3 otherwise, if you would please.
Therefore Pilate entered again into the Praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered, Are you saying this in your own initiative, or did others tell you about me? Pilate answered, I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests delivered you to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm. Therefore Pilate said to him, So you are a king? Jesus answered, You say correctly that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into this world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice.
Okay, thank you. Now, remember, Jesus did not say anything when he was questioned by the priest until Caiaphas charged him under oath to God. And at that point he spoke, and the manner in which he spoke constituted blasphemy from their point of view. Again, we don't question that he's the Son of God, but if you had a question, or if that didn't seem appropriate to you, then he was guilty of blasphemy. Okay, so now he's answering Pilate. And what's really important here for us, verse 36, my kingdom is not of this world. And then finishing up 36, my kingdom is not of this realm. And we talked about that some time ago, where he's really telling Pilate, it's not a worldly kingdom. Remember I brought up about the vision of Nebuchadnezzar, that dream he had about the statue and how this stone cut out of the mountain grew and, you know, crushed the statue, and it grew to fill the whole world. You know, it's that he was talking in those kind of terms. So as we look at this, he's telling Pilate, I'm not a threat. I'm not a threat. I'm a king, absolutely. But I'm not a worldly king. I'm not a king of a province or anything of that nature. It's not a worldly kingdom that I'm talking about. So Pilate accepts that. And we'll look at this from another point of view in Luke 23, verses 3 through 7, please.
And Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And he answered, "You have said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no fault in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up people, teaching throughout the Judea, all Judea from Galilee, even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. When he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at this time.
Thank you. Now, a couple of points here. And again, we're looking at, from a little different perspective. After speaking with Jesus the first time there, and Jesus saying, "My kingdom is not of this world," then verse 4, Pilate said, "I find no guilt in this man." Because remember, basically they're charging him with rebellion. He's got to maintain order. They kind of shied away from the taxation part. They threw it out there to start with. But they're really working on this maintain order business. And again, from all appearances, they want Jesus crucified. That's how they want him executed. And crucifixion is only for rebellion and for slaves. Jesus was a free man. He was not a slave. The only way to have him crucified was have him pictured as a rebel. That was the only option open.
They're big-time liars.
What's that?
Big-time liars.
That's right. And manipulators, they're pretty good at it. You kind of, again, as we follow along here, you watch how they just kind of tighten that box. They've got Pilate in. Okay. And they were saying he stirs up the people. Okay, again, he's got to maintain order. And this is the time, during the time, again, of minor rebellions, different things going on. And we'll talk about, well, actually, you're familiar with the word Barabbas, the one that was released. He was a revolutionary. He was in prison for leading a revolution that had murdered people. So, it's not like, golly, this is the first time this happened. It was an ongoing situation, probably like Chicago and people being, I can't think of the word I want, gunshot. Drive-bys and this and that and the other. It's kind of an ongoing thing. And that's what we're looking at here. So, Galilean. All right, so you send him to Herod. And as we talked, Herod is governor of Galilee. So let's take a look at his appearance before Herod Antipas. So Luke 23, 8 through 12, please.
When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him as some length, but he made no answer. The chief priest and the scribe stood by, vehemently accusing him. But how far?
Through 12.
And Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day. for before this they had been at enmity with each other.
Thank you. Now, something that's kind of interesting here, 2 points out of this. One, now Jesus is back to being silent. He's there with Herod. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't even respond to anything that Herod asks him. And Herod was going to be, Herod was glad to see him. Herod had been very, what's the word I want? Compassionate in that sense. Jesus had a reputation that Herod was aware of. The other thing is, the chief priests and the scribes were there accusing him. So when Pilate sent Jesus over to Herod, the chief priest, find my place, and the scribes, or elders, were there. They went too. Okay, Herod, look, this guy's done this, he's done this. And we don't know exactly what they said, but I think I'd be very close to correct in saying they were looking, again, at the responsibilities. I mean, that's a card they're playing. This is your responsibility. This person comes under that heading, okay? And, okay, so he's over to Herod. Then Herod sent him back to Pilate. Now let's go on with verse 13 through 16, please.
Then Pilate then called together the chief priests and the elders and the rulers and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people, and after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish him and release him."
Thank you. So we see the sequence here. We've got two governors, Roman governors, that under Roman law, they found him innocent. You know, this kind of interesting how, I mean, they really cover the bases here. From Jesus' point of view, you know, from Scripture and to the Jews, they can point at this and say, look, not just Pilate, but Herod, both of them found him innocent of rebellion. My translation, and I'm not saying this is correct, but my translation says, when Pilate summoned them, and verse 14 said to them, "You brought this man to me as one who incites the people to rebellion." Because that was one of the charges that they were bringing. Okay. And then he goes on and says, "I will punish him and release him." Now, Pilate could punish basically anybody, anytime, for no reason at all. And in some of the Gospels, it talks about him having Jesus flogged. And the sequence is a little hard to follow sometimes because, you know, each Gospel is looking at a little bit different perspective here. That's why we're coming at it from several different Gospels to kind of pull out some points. So he was going to have him flogged. Now, I've talked in the past about what a Jewish beating is, and the Jewish beating is the one that is for civil disobedience, where it's the priest and the Sanhedrin. Actually, it's judge. They use a judge. So I think it's probably one of the elders, or maybe a chief priest, not high priest, but chief priest, that acts as judge. And if this person is guilty, and again, we're talking now more a court of law. The most severe punishment that can be given in a court of law is the 40 stripes less one. And I talked about that. You know, he had the whip, had the 3 thongs, and so forth. And each strike counted as 3 stripes. So we're talking now a Roman flogging. That's the one you hear about with the scourge, with the metal tips on the thongs and so forth. Excuse me. So when he says, I'll punish him and release him, that's generally flogging is what they would do. Now at this point, Pilate is upholding the Roman law right down to the letter. So, and the fact that he's saying, I don't find it, you know, nothing deserving of death has been done by him. So now he's got backup also from Herod that, hey, you know, this guy's innocent. So under Roman law, no way. Now, flogging and maybe other things, maybe a fine and stuff, those are all acceptable. He cannot be put to death. An innocent person cannot be put to death under Roman law. Period. End of story. So, at this point, you know, and Pilate, again, he's on record. He said, I don't find any fault. Herod finds no fault. So, let's go on from here. Let's go to John 19, please. Who has that? Okay. If you would, please.
Pilate came out again and said to them, Behold, I am bringing him out.
No. Judy has 19. You've got 18. Right? I'm sorry. I broke it. I gave you the couple of 18s and we're dropping to 19. I thought I'd share the glory here. Judy, if you would, please. 4 through 11.
Pilate
I'm sorry.
therefore went forth again and said unto them, Behold, I bring him forth to you, that you might know that I find no fault in him. Then came Jesus forth, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate said unto them, Behold the man. When the chief priests therefore and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. Pilate said unto them, Take ye him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him. The Jews answered him, We have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he was the more afraid, and went again into the judgment hall, and said unto Jesus, Whence art thou? But Jesus gave him no answer. Then said Pilate unto him, Speakest thou not unto me? Do you not know that I have power to crucify you, and have power to release you? Jesus answered, You could have no power at all against me, except it was given you from above. Therefore he that delivered me unto you has the greater sin.
Thank you. Now, this is, you know, the second interview or questioning by Pilate. And again, he's, at this point, you know, it says Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Now, purple robe most likely is the one that was given to him by Herod. The crown of thorns was by the Roman soldiers there with Pilate at the Praetorium. Excuse me. And now we get to verse 6 there. When the chief priests and the officers saw him, they cried out, Crucify, crucify. And again, we know the context here. Only certain people can be crucified, period. End of story. And they know they don't have much hope of getting Pilate to do anything, particularly putting him to death, unless they can really put the pressure on him. So crucify, that's how they want him to die. We've talked about why. And then in verse 7, we have a law, and by that law he ought to die because he made himself out to be the Son of God. Now, I just love that verse 8. when Pilate heard this, he became even more afraid. He was spooked. My goodness, what have these folks backed me into? He's really, getting between a rock and a hard place, big time. Yes, ma'am.
The Jewish leaders were trying to find a legal way to commit murder.
Right, actually, they decided that. That was,
Yeah.
but crucifixion is when they made their plans after the high priest got him for, Jesus said he was the Messiah, the Son of, you will see something about seeing him at the right hand of power on high. Yeah. So, again, the manipulation here, they decided on crucifixion. And to make that happen, they've got to make a good case before Pilate. Okay. So, and he's more afraid. So, and we'll talk a little later when we get down to Matthew 27 about him sitting in judgment seat. We'll look at his wife sent him a message about this. So he's getting a lot of anxiety from a lot of different areas. Okay, now we're going to segue for a moment here on the prisoner release. The custom of releasing a prisoner, we're coming up on Matthew, sir.
Okay.
The custom of releasing a prisoner chosen by the people comes up. Now this custom is related to, or linked to Passover. So 15 through 18, please.
All right. Now at that feast, the governor was wont to release unto the people a prisoner whom they would. And they had then a notable prisoner called Barabbas. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will ye that I release unto you, Barabbas or Jesus, which is called Christ? For he knew that for envy they had delivered him.
Thank you. So, 2 or 3 things here. He knew that because of envy. Well, one of the things that's coming up here, we've got another stated reason why the Jews were wanting to kill him. Envy. Excuse me. Okay. I'm going to take a minute, kind of a segue here, or side note, more accurate. Holding a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. And I've looked at this through several different translations and the different gospels, and in some he's called a robber. Also the ones that were crucified with him. What I find extremely interesting, well, let me back up before I get to that part. Barabbas. I never paid any attention to the name before. Do you know how Hebrew names run? What's the name for father in Hebrew?
Abba.
Exactly. What's the last part of Barabbas' name?
Abba.
Right. What does bar mean?
The son of the father.
Son of.
Yeah.
This would be translated to us as daddy's boy.
Yep.
That don't really sound like a proper name, does it? But daddy's boy. That's really how you would translate it today. Daddy's boy. Wow, but that's what he's called, not just but the Jews and Pilate call him daddy's boy. Excuse me. And not just the scripture now, but I'm referring to some of those other writings, historical writings like letters to Rome and stuff like that. They indicate that Barabbas was a leader in a rebellion against Rome, which had murdered people. I mentioned that a little earlier. So, I mean, that's established. It's a fact. It's established. Now, he was in prison for that crime. Be extremely, extremely probable that he was going to be crucified. If you're a rebel, unless you're of high social standing, you're going to be crucified, period. I mean, that's what crucifixion was for. So Jesus took the place of a rebel who was released, and he was executed in Barabbas' place as a rebel. I just thought that swap was so interesting. Barabbas wasn't, just a thief or this or that. He was guilty of what Jesus was charged for. Jesus was found innocent. Barabbas was found guilty. And just another side note here. I mentioned the two crucified with Jesus were classified as revolutionaries also. And you recall Simon the Zealot was a disciple. He was one of the 12. Zealot was a political movement dedicated to independence for Judea. So you wouldn't necessarily consider them pro-Roman. There's some other aspects to this, and Simon doesn't come into play in any of this, but it's just interesting that he was actually one of the inner circle. He's identified with the political party even. I mean, he was obviously active in it. So, we probably better stop right there. What we will look at next week, Pilate tries several times to have the people choose Jesus. So I recommend, where are we at here, 27? Recommend you look at this particularly and look at how that and in John, look at how they really give Pilate no place to go. That's, I titled that section, Pilate's Dilemma. It's set up in Matthew 27 and John 19. We have no king but Caesar, which I find so ironic, I guess, that we have no king but Caesar, but we want this revolutionary that's been convicted of treason released. So, okay, we'll pick it up at that point next week. And looking here, I think we'll probably finish next week, and I'm anticipating having an outline for the Book of Jonah available at that point. And we will, a couple of weeks from now, I'm anticipating, I'm not telling you it's going to happen, I know these things don't quite work like that, but I'm anticipating that we will move into the Book of Jonah. Thank you.